Hello and welcome to News Capsule. In a swift development, the G20 finance ministers, including Mr. Arun Jaitley, last Thursday endorsed the OECD final report on base erosion and profit shifting, popularly known as BEPS project. This project was initiated 2 years back and is aimed at tackling the hydra-headed problem of double non-taxation and global problem of tax avoidance. The report is all about dealing with the problem of profit shifting by multinationals who make use of all kinds of instruments like low tax and no tax jurisdiction to keep away their profits from the revenue authorities outside their countries of residence. As per some reports, the Fortune 500 companies in the USA alone have kept as high as $2 trillion outside the USA. Back home, while talking about the BEPS report, CBDT chairperson Anita Kapur at the CII Global Conference on International Taxation last week said that the era of tax avoidance by multinational is over. Let us first hear Ms. Kapur.
What is the message coming from the BEPS report? Which is music to my ears at least. We've been talking of this as tax policy makers for the last 20 years. Please tax income where the economic activity happens and where the value addition happens. Message 1. Please give credence to substance rather than form. Message 2. Please don't allow double non-taxation to happen. Message 3. Please don't allow incomes to disappear or incomes to go and sit in low tax countries. Message 4. Don't allow treaties to be abused. Message 5. Allow consistency in approach. Have the international tax rules so devised that developed countries and developing countries can follow, comprehend, and enforce. These are the messages which are good for a tax administration, and these are the messages which I hope are good for the people who are doing business and the people who are advising the businesses. The era of tax avoidance, I'm not talking of evasion, tax avoidance in garb of minimizing your taxes is over.
Although I feel tempted to share the sentiment of Ms. Kapur, but is it so simple? Do we have enough reasons to be so optimistic? Does BEPS report really offer so much to the developing countries in general and India in particular? Even if there are a few good recommendations which India can adopt to deal with the problem of cross-border tax avoidance, what needs to be done to gear up our tax machinery to meet the challenges? Let us hear TIE Consulting Editor and former Joint Secretary, Foreign Taxation Division in the CBDT, Mr. D.P. Sengupta.
The BEPS project actually vindicates the stand taken by the much maligned Indian revenue that everything is not all right with the current international tax regulations. India has been voicing these concerns for a long time, and in fact, it was in the late 90s that India had appointed a high-powered group committee to look into the aspects of e-commerce and consequent loss of revenue to the source countries. At that time, the OECD had taken the position that there is no need to change the rules. It is only in 2008, after the financial crisis, when the finances of the developed countries themselves were at stake, that the BEPS project started. Now OECD has come up with the report. It was there in the public domain for some time. The final report is not much different from what was already there. There are some minor differences. So, OECD also recognizes that there is substantial base erosion that takes place by the activities of multinational companies. But that said, there are certain basic issues which have not been dealt with by the OECD. For example, why base erosion takes place? Of course, the OECD has identified a few areas, but apart from what have been identified by the OECD in the project, there are certain more areas, like for example, base erosion takes place because of the current rules of taxation, whereby if you take many examples from the reported cases, take the case of rice florist, for example. It was not possible for India to tax any profit that was going out of India, and the overall profit base was being eroded because the rules of international taxation are such that it did not give the right of taxation to India. So, those kind of issues will still remain. These are inadequacies of the present system, and the base erosion takes place both in the developed countries and the developing countries. So, only those areas will be covered, but when this project was undertaken, there was a high hope that we will now, because what happens is that the present international tax structure was organized in the 1920s under the League of Nations, and at that time most of the developing countries did not exist. So, it was the colonial masters who dictated the terms of the agreement. So, and when a new structure is being put in place, it was expected that these kind of issues should also be addressed, but OECD has not been able to do it, because there is no point in blaming OECD, because OECD after all is a club of rich countries. Still they have come up with certain suggestions. They have stuck to the time limit, so that the credit must be given to the OECD Secretariat. Treaty shopping, they have given some good suggestions, and it all depends on how the political dispensation acts on those suggestions. Now, the question is whether the OECD has suggested a limitation of benefits, limitation on benefits clause to be incorporated based on the model that we have with the USA, for example. Not only that, they say that what they have suggested is that even if one passes the LOB test, there should be a principal purpose test to supplement the LOB test. Yes, and the question is whether we are willing to go that route. If the proper LOB is put in place, then the treaty shopping will obviously disappear, but it is a question of the willingness of the government. We might be having a treaty renegotiated with Mauritius on the same lines as we have with Singapore, which has put a very minuscule amount of 50 lakhs of rupees of in 2 years expenditure as evidence of substance. So, those kind of LOBs are not going to discourage treaty shopping.
Let me thank Mr. Sengupta for sharing a valuable insight into the very complex international public law which is poised for a major change almost after 100 years. And he is right when he says that although the BEPS final report does not address some of the key issues like indirect transfer of assets located in the source country, Vodafone case in India is one such example of this issue. Taxation of global entities operating in e-commerce space such as eBay, Google and Alibaba is another important issue, but hopefully it would address some of the glaring ills of the international taxation system such as treaty shopping, the problem of opaque tax jurisdiction known as tax haven, much healthier exchange of information, country by country reporting by multinationals and tax treatment of hybrid financial instruments. Let's hope the implementation of BEPS recommendations turns out to be a major step forward, even if it does not address all the concerns of the developing world. Thank you for watching TIOL TV.